everyone, today we're going to be applying the distributive property, which is basically saying you've got a set of brackets and something out front that needs to be distributed or multiplied into both of the terms inside. So in this first example here, this is going to be 7 times both of these things. Over here, this is going to be -8 times both the b and the 3, and so on. And what that leads to is equations that have brackets, essentially just like this. So where you will apply the distributive property to clean this up a bit and then continue and solve for d. And over here you'll do the same thing, apply -3.6, multiply it in to both of these, and then draw a line through the equal sign and solve for r. So before we do the equations, we're just going to take a look and do these 6 examples of what that looks like. The only part that gets tricky is with the negatives, okay? And before we get started, I want you to recognize that even though this says 1 minus 8n, when we're multiplying, we're going to consider, so multiplying this 7 through, we're going to consider this to be a -8, even though it says minus, okay? And here, this is -8 times, both of these are positive, okay? Here we've got positive 3x, and even though it says -9, we're going to treat it as -9 when we multiply this through, okay? So let's take a look at the first one. So basically all we're doing is multiplying the 7 by both of the things inside, okay? So we're going to have 7 times 1, and we're going to have 7 times -8n, okay? That's going to give us 7, and the bottom here, this is going to give us -56n, because 7 times -8, the signs are different, so it's -56. So now we're left with this, okay? So we're just going to write them essentially side by side. So the answer to this would be 7 minus 56n, okay? So it went from -8n to -8n to -56n, and then our answer, it went to -56n. So the words positive and addition are used synonymously, like they mean the same thing. And so does subtract and negative, okay? So this is what the answer would be, 7 minus 56n. Let's try the next one. So we've got -8 times b and -8 times +3. So -8 times b and -8 times +3. So this is going to give us -8b, and this is going to give us -24. So now we just write them side by side. So our answer is -8b minus 24. Okay, so if we were to apply the distributive property to this example here, we would get -8b minus 24. Okay? Let's try one more here, and then I'll let you try those other 3. So this one's going to give us -6 times 9 and -6 times -9b. Okay, so when we do the top here, we're going to have -54. And on the bottom here, we're going to have positive 54v. And the reason it's positive is because a negative times a negative gives us a positive. And now we just write them side by side. Now, -54, and then we're going to have to put something in between these two. This is positive, okay? So we're actually going to put a plus sign in between them. So the answer is negative 54 plus 54b. Okay, and the reason we put a plus sign is because it's positive. So we put a plus sign. Here it was negative, so we wrote it as a minus. Here it was negative, so we wrote it as a minus. So here, and if it's positive, we assume that it is a plus sign. Okay, so pause the video and try these other ones. Remember this negative right here is going to be a -1 times these two. Okay, so maybe I'll rewrite that for you so you can see it. And then pause the video and try it. So this is actually -1 3x minus 9. And see if you can get the correct answers. And then when we come back, we will try these equations at the bottom. Okay? So pause the video and try 4, 5, and 6. And then come back and the answers will be there for you. Okay? Okay, and here's our answers. You should have, so this is -1 times 3x, which is going to give us -3x, and then -1 times -9 is +9. So we write it as +9. Down here, -9 times n is -9n. -9 times +6 is -54, so we write it as -54. And over here we have -10a, and then -10 times +2 is -20, so we write it as -20. Okay? Let's take a look at these equations at the bottom here. So this is 3d, or 3 times d plus 0.4 equals -3.9. So we're going to distribute this 3 in first. So we're going to get 3 times this and 3 times that. So we're going to have 3d plus 1.2 equals -3.9. Okay, and this is just multiplication. 3 times d and 3 times 0.4 is 1.2. We didn't have to worry about any signs here because everything's positive. And now we simply solve it. Draw a line through the equal sign. Subtract 1.2 from both sides. And we get 3d on the left. And this is going to give us -5.1. And then divide both sides by 3. Divide by 3. And d is going to give us -1.7. Okay? For the second one here, we got to watch the signs. So we're going to multiply in like so. So we have -3.6 times 0.25. So that's a negative times a positive. So -3.6 times 0.25 is -0.9. And then we have -3.6 times -r. And that's a -1r. Okay, so basically it's a negative times a negative, which is going to give us plus 3.6 r. Okay, and that's all going to equal the right side, which is 0.18. Okay, so now we're just going to draw a line through the equal sign. We're going to get rid of this -0.9 by adding it to both sides. And that gives us 3.6r on the left equals .08, and then we're going to divide both sides by 3.6. Divide by 3.6, and we get r equals 0.3. Okay, so basically this video is about applying the distributive property, okay, to get these answers in blue here. And then showing you sort of where we're going with it is we're going to solve equations that have sets of brackets like this, where you need to apply the distributive property to clean it up, and then we can solve and get our answers. So we're going to be spending some time on this over the next couple of days here. Okay.